Good afternoon, Philadelphia. Welcome back to the Conservative Voice on WWDB AM 860. This is your host, Gary Heasley. And I am in the studio today with Felice Fein, a state Republican committee member. Welcome, Felice.
My pleasure.
And with, for the first time, Bunny Welsh, who is joining us today. Bunny, welcome to the Conservative Voice.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you with us. Look, obviously this has been a unique week, to say the least. And I think a lot of folks are wondering, what to think of it. And so I got to say, first of all, let's not despair. This shouldn't be that surprising. We've been talking about a lot of issues for a very long time that all came to fruition here on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. We've talked about election fraud for 5 years. There has been no organized, concerted effort by the Republican Party or the federal government or the state government to battle election fraud. In fact, the Republican Party in Pennsylvania, for reasons unknowable, decided that they'd make their main strategy in all of this pushing mail-in ballots. Funded it to $12 million, burned that cash, could have just as easily just shoved it in a sewer. But that's the strategy they landed on. I don't know why, but, we'll talk about mail-in ballots a little bit in the second hour when we get to New Jersey. But, we know that there's fraud. That's evident, the 81 million Biden votes and so on. But we also know that when you look at messaging across the nation and in every one of these critical markets. Now, remember, in Pennsylvania, we are called a swing state. And the crux of the swing state, the keystone of the keystone, is Southeast Pennsylvania. Because you've got about 33% of the population in 5 counties, Bucks, Montgomery, Delaware, Chester, and Philadelphia. And in those 5 counties, you've got about 45% of GDP, or 44, something in that range.
Right.
So a huge concentration of what happens in Pennsylvania happens here. 2 of these states are considered 2 of the top 20 most important states in the country, that being Delaware and Chester. Those that
counties,
really decide what's going on, whether Pennsylvania is going to go one way or another. And those counties were lost to the Democrat Party in entirety after maybe being controlled by Republicans for 100 years or more. And now we're in a position where Republicans have no influence whatsoever in county government, in most of the townships, and nearly every school board. So this isn't something that just popped up out of the blue. There has been tremendous amounts of money and effort and strategy and media focus on making sure that these 5 counties in Southeast Pennsylvania remain hardcore Democrat strongholds. And truth be told, there's no counter except what the grassroots do, what some of the county committees do, what we do here on the radio show, what we do in town halls, and not just us, but I mean people like us that are doing this across the Commonwealth, but also in this area. We've got patriot groups scattered across these 5 counties that are doing really great work. Flip Philly Red in Philadelphia, others. Right for Bucks in Bucks County. And then you've got the county committees. But the party itself is not functioning effectively. I think that's obvious. But when you look at something like this supersedes all of that. This is nationwide. I mean, we now have the mayor of Minneapolis just get elected. He is not Somalian. But he gives his speech, his acceptance speech, in Somalian. We've got, of course,
America.
In America. We've got the mayor in New York, of course, now, Mamdani, who swept through. And we'll talk about that more in the second hour. But, that seems shocking to people if you haven't really been paying attention. But if you go back just a couple of, 6 months and listen to our conversations with people like Mark Mitchell and others, you're going to find that all of this has been laid out. We've been explaining where the holes are and where we're losing support among the base, the core people that got Donald Trump elected. And to be clear, there's Donald Trump and what happened in 2024 when he won every single swing state, and there's the Republican Party. They are not the same thing. Voters don't look at them the same way, and for good reason. Just look at what Congress is doing. So we've got really different situations here, than what the Democrats have, where they have unlimited money. They want to run a protest, they have $300 million to do it. So we shouldn't be stunned by it. We shouldn't be surprised by it. I would say do not despair. We still have, for now, the House, the Senate, and the White House, right? Maybe we're not doing enough with it, but it's there. And we still have a tremendous network of groups and people and folks that really care about this country. Now, it does seem after Tuesday that the radicals have taken over the nation. And it seems that they have in large places like Minneapolis and New York City.
Yeah.
But remember, we've spent a lot of time on the polling, and we have access to Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen, who we've gone back and forth on this with. It's only about 30% of the country that really fits in that mold of radical. It's only about 30%. Mm-hmm. It's more like 70% that are either hardcore pro-American, really informed and engaged, or these people that are sort of murky in the middles who don't really know what's going on and move left or right. But, we're going to touch on this in detail in the second hour. But when you look at the voting for Mamdani, if you think that doesn't make sense, it's because you haven't been paying attention. It makes absolute sense what happened. And now, our plan for today has changed a bit. We had planned to have Emerald Robinson on the second half of the show, the second hour. Emerald, unfortunately, is not feeling well today, so she won't be with us. But we have Mark Mitchell and Liz Harrington coming on in the second hour. So, the depth of this is going to be great.
That's
so
great.
we certainly we'll get Emerald on as soon as she's feeling well and we can fit into her schedule because we love to get her insights. But Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports and Liz Harrington, former spokeswoman for Trump, those are great guests. The insights they're going to bring in the second half are going to be fascinating. So I'm anxiously looking forward to that. In this first hour, we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened, and I want to hear your thoughts on what happened.
Great.
And then we're going to roll into this discussion of Arctic frost, because Bunny, as some of our listeners know, was a target of Arctic frost. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what Arctic frost was an investigation run by the federal government where they targeted senators and congressmen, but more importantly, they targeted citizens who had not committed crimes.
Correct.
And they targeted them because they were supporting the opposition to the radicals and the globalists. And so they swept up citizens in this net and used the full power of the federal government to try to crush them. And remember the saying, the process is the punishment. You say, well, they didn't get convicted. We'll hear more about this later, but the process is the punishment. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go through that. But now, switching back to Tuesday, again, I know folks are feeling really down and out. I don't blame them. I can tell you that I've got direct knowledge of really well-run campaigns with really good candidates that were funded appropriately for that market, maybe like township supervisor races. They don't need $100 million, right? They were funded well. They had great volunteers. The candidates knocked doors until their knuckles bled. They did great messaging. They talked about the issues people care about, and they lost by wide margins.
Right.
This
Correct.
problem is bigger than any of these throwaway excuses that the party gives. And I'll tell you one last thing before because I want to hear from you folks.
Sure.
Blaming the customer is not the answer, all right? If you think the problem is lazy voters or that Republicans haven't been convinced that they have to vote, well, then you're simply not paying attention. Or not that you're not paying attention, because a lot of people paying attention have this view. But you've got to rethink this. The voters owe you nothing. You owe them a reason to vote. If you're going to bring them to the polls or have them fill out one of these crazy mail-in things, if you're going to do that, there's got to be a reason. And remember this, on this low propensity idea, we're going to put these mail-in ballots in low propensity hands.
People that don't regularly vote.
Who do they hear from last? Whoever sends them the last text, the last pop-up message. That's why if you look at the disaster in Lancaster, the special election earlier in the year where a very popular Republican was beat handily by a radical leftist in a market that hadn't had a Democrat there since 1984, I think.
Yeah.
And that Trump had just won by 15 points. You know who delivered that win? Every bit of the margin of victory in that was delivered by mail-in ballots, delivered by low-propensity voters who last heard from the other side. So this shouldn't be a surprise, right? So we cannot blame the customer. It is not method of voting. The reason we aren't getting better turnout is because we're not talking to the voters about the things they care about, and more importantly, we're not messaging consistently through the year. And then lastly, once the candidates run, they may sound like squishy Democrats, and no one's going to vote for the generic when you can get the original. And once they're in office, if they don't deliver for the people will not come. Marjorie Taylor Greene put up a great post yesterday and said, this is Business 101. If you don't deliver for your customer, they will not return to buy your product. So
here are my thoughts. In Pennsylvania, the Republican Party really pushed the vote no on retention for the Supreme Court justices. And that was the big thing that they were talking about. It was everywhere for a while. And then the Democrat Party, I think, caught on and said, we've got to counter this, and we got to counter it hard. Well, they've got the money to do that. And in the last 2 weeks before that election, maybe 3 weeks before the election, all you saw on TV were ads for the Supreme Court justice, from the Democrat Supreme Court justices, saying, please retain me. I've been great. Vote yes on retention. And there was very little, became very quiet from the Republican Party on the vote no. Yes, people still had a few signs and that kind of thing, but it was very quiet. And to your point, the last message that people heard was vote yes on retention. And I believe that was the most effective message to drive Democrats and independents out, because they were saving democracy by voting yes to retain these great justices of the Supreme Court, to maintain, the democracy in Pennsylvania. And I didn't personally get the messaging, but that the abortion issue is going to be prime for that segment of the population, and we've got to make sure that we save our rights as women and whatnot. So I think that was a huge issue. That was a non-issue, honestly, in the Republican Party. And they should know this. How often is a judge not retained? Rarely. Once someone is elected for the 10-year term, it is a rare thing that they are kicked out. Very rare. So the fact that the Republican Party took that as the big issue, how many people knew Maria Batista was running for Superior Court?
They had no idea.
Rarely. I mean, they didn't know. They knew about this vote no, but they didn't know about the candidates. And so I think that the Republican Party in Pennsylvania took this issue, and it was a losing issue to begin with. It should not have been the primary issue that was messaged by the PAGOP, by local parties.
Not only that, it confused the voter.
Absolutely.
The voters were highly confused over that. What is this? Vote yes, vote no. Well, vote no for the state, but vote yes for the local. They were totally confused. The voters were confused over that issue. Look, voters sometimes here don't even understand why we vote for judges.
Right.
That's a hard race to run. To run for judge, well, we can give our talking points. You want someone who abides by the Constitution and doesn't legislate from the bench.
Follows the law.
Or follows the law and all those kinds of things. But the average person does not interact, even if it's on a local, maybe a local judge, maybe a magisterial district judge on a parking ticket. Very seldom is the average citizen in the Court of Common Pleas. And they have no idea about appellate courts, a superior court, a Commonwealth court, the Supreme Court. They have no idea. That you're absolutely right. That messaging, the time and energy spent into that, I think confused. That time and energy and financing could have been better spent, and that was a bad issue to take up. We weren't going to win it. So,
that's the question. Was this going to drive Republican voters to the polls, this vote no message? Now, we spent a lot of time on it. We put out flyers and we talked about it on the show. We talked about it in town halls. We did everything we could do to drive that message. But it would be something you'd almost have to learn when you're at the polls. And to be clear, I went to vote on it, and I had to read my own. I'm pulling up the flyer. We have this woman named Sue who does this fabulous work, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I've got Sue's flyer right in my hands, and so I was reading it to make sure I got it right, because it is complicated, and if you're going to motivate customers, and let's just stop thinking of voters as something other than customers. If you're going to motivate customers, you need a simple message that connects with them emotionally. Vote no didn't. Now that doesn't mean it wasn't an important message to message on. It was. It was critical to talk about. but it wasn't going to be enough to get him out there.
Right.
And so the Democrats, through the corporate media, through their control of social media, at some level, we now have some free speech on social media, but their control of social media and algorithms, they are constantly messaging on the issues. Now, you mentioned abortion, Felice, and abortion is what we spent all of 23 and 4 talking about as one of the 3 magic words. They had climate. Well, now we got Bill Gates saying climate's not the issue. They've lost that.
We need our AI.
Right. That's right. He needs power now. Suddenly, coal's not so bad. What a hypocrite. And then they had, of course, gender, and I think they just pushed that so far that it didn't work. But that said, there's now a guy in Downingtown as mayor who is, I guess, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know this person, but he thinks he's a woman, or he is. I don't know what it is. If he's converted,
trans woman.
He's trans.
So he's. I don't know if he's gone
He's
over
a
the
man
knife
who
yet.
dresses as a woman.
Getting the injections.
He's a trans woman.
Okay.
Trans
Well, that.
Isn't that a trans man? It's a trans woman.
I haven't really been
I think
comfortable.
it was Charlie Kirk that said you just substitute the term fake for trans. So
Okay, so he's a
would be
fake woman.
That was Charlie Kirk's way of.
The
putting
last
it.
thing I could tell clearly that was around trans was the Trans Am, which I love. Right? So, I mean, it's just, that's an issue that lost a lot of its power. It's still amongst the radicals. They still were dedicated to this and think it's a huge issue for America. But to the public, that wasn't going to get them out. So they lost climate, they lost that, they still have abortion. We did a segment on abortion that was emotionally charged, let's say. And I think we'll post it again. But the reality is, if the Republican Party doesn't start talking about abortion in a way that is effective, then that will continue to be a weapon that can be used without any limitation to stop them in every election. If you have a position on something that is not clear to voters, or they think you're trying to hurt them, or you want to hurt women somehow, well, then you better explain it.
Yep.
And I talk to women all the time who are passionately opposed to this abortion as birth control, and some of them have had abortions, and they've experienced that trauma. Well, you got to talk about it in a way that people connect. So ignoring it clearly doesn't work. So I keep coming back to messaging and marketing, because politics is just like business. In fact, as Chris likes to say, politics is business. And when you look at things like picking, candidates at state committee, that's all about the money.
Oh, yeah. We
So-
know that, don't we, Felice?
We do.
So who were the statewide candidates this time? The Commodore, I can't remember his name.
Matt Wolford.
Okay, thank you.
Ran for Commonwealth Court.
Okay.
And Maria Batista ran for Superior Court.
Now, we heard from Maria. We put her on the show, and she was a great candidate.
And she had statewide name recognition from running before. And
Yes.
she had statewide name recognition, was strongly supported by the party, and people liked her. She was an excellent candidate.
Yeah. Well, and she beat the candidate that the 4 or 5 people that do the statewide endorsements picked. Yes. Right? I know it's 4 or 5. I don't know how many people do the statewide endorsements, and then beat on the state committee people until they agree to vote for them. But she beat that person, whoever that was.
In the primary, she did.
In the primary.
Yes.
So she had some electoral
Amory
success,
Wheatcraft
so to
from
speak.
Chester County, by the way.
Oh, who's a great judge.
She
Excellent.
is the president
She has a
judge.
fabulous
Excellent.
reputation.
President judge in Chester County, and I, for one, am grateful that she is still there.
You got to ask the question, why would they decide to take someone who's sitting in a critical role in a county that's been taken over by radicals and remove them from that position? Because what? Because 5 or 6 people want a friend to run it? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
And the last Republican judge elected to Chester County was luckily retained on Tuesday. Allison Bell Royer.
Yes.
She was the last Republican elected to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
We have not had a Republican judge elected there in 10 years.
That's astonishing. So you wouldn't really want to pull one of those out.
No.
But they tried.
No.
And so Maria Batista ran. She did everything she could. Now, I guarantee you that she had less funding than the mail-in ballot campaign. Now, you know that I keep going on about mail-in ballots. So you're obsessed. Listen, I'm obsessed because you're obsessed. I'm obsessed because you misdirect human and financial resources into a failed strategy that only brings on additional fraud and drives outcomes like the disaster in Lancaster. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we've covered the statistics. We'll walk you through the analysis. Call us. So that's the problem, is you got a Maria Batista crisscrossing the Commonwealth, going everywhere she can with no resources. You've got no overarching messaging that's effective. And so then if you bring forward a really good township candidate, they're fighting against a wave of messaging that's almost impossible to
Right,
overcome.
whether it's a township supervisor candidate or a school board candidate. Personally, I had a township candidate who was a West Point grad, 26 years in the military, was the deputy in charge, deputy commander, I think, I'm not sure the terminology, but for the Army Corps of Engineers in Philadelphia, had budget experience, engineering experience, leadership experience, basically could run circles around his Democrat opponent as far as the resume and the ability to perform a township supervisor role. But he got slaughtered.
You're talking about qualifications.
Qualifications over versus a D or an
Felice.
R, and that's the thing right now. When we come to the candidates, qualifications on a resume just don't matter.
Okay. All right. Now, here's the thing. Donald Trump won Pennsylvania. Maybe not Chester County and Delaware County. He didn't win Philadelphia,
Right.
but he got more support in Philadelphia than any other Republican presidential candidate in memory.
Correct.
Sure.
Maybe ever. Right? I don't know how long this has gone on that the Democrats have had this stranglehold in Philadelphia, 100 years? I don't know. So Donald Trump wins that, and yet a highly qualified township supervisor can't win. Why?
There is a machine that is in play starting last year. The machine is in play with the Democrat Party that is well funded, that has very simple messaging. People don't have to think. And so I hate to say that they're sheep or lemmings, but they don't ask questions. When my own son is asking, well, what are the Democrat options? We've already lost, right? We've already lost. If the Republicans are thinking, they're trying to make choices, and the opponents are not. The other side, they're not thinking. They've been taught what to think and which way to go, and there is not a choice.
Sounds like
Why
Congress.
It does a little bit. I mean, so what do you think happened? Why the difference? Last year, Donald Trump sweeps these 7 swing states, and this year, the entire nation is handed over to these lunatics.
Well, I agree with Felice, and as you know, all politics are local. There is no
They
other
used to be,
Donald Trump.
anyway.
With him at the top of the ticket, I mean, that was powerful. I saw also what you did with a local school board race. Well-funded, qualified candidate. A lot of money spent on messaging, mailing, all kinds of things. She was highly qualified, and she was absolutely creamed. No, because she believes in the boys should not be playing in girls' sports. It was all about those hot
The
button
gender
issues, the
issues.
gender issues. And that came into a local school board race, the same way it came into the mayor's race in Downingtown.
But Donald Trump won Pennsylvania and the other swing states, taking the position that's unpopular according to that, right? So,
Sure.
so here's the other thing.
That's
All
true,
politics
too.
are local. Did Donald Trump run a local campaign? He did. I mean, think about this. He did a rally, and you guys all know the name of the place. This place down here, this arena in Philadelphia, starts with an L.
Is that where we danced?
No, that wasn't that.
okay.
That was somewhere else. I think maybe it was there.
Oh, on Temple's campus.
Yeah. And so he had a rally in Philadelphia. The room was full. Not everybody from Philadelphia. Again, we spend a lot of time with the folks from Flip Philly Red. Mina's on the show a lot. John's on the show. Sure. They did a lot of hard work. There was actually a local campaign for Trump. And then Trump Force 47, rather than go around the Republican Party, he went right down the middle of it. And he made the Republican Party support his campaign. And when you think about the way he used surrogates, Donald Trump used surrogates in the local community. Remember the bus that ran around Southeast Pennsylvania loaded with people? They would change out from time to time. They did 1,000 stops. They were everywhere. He was doing probably 4 events a week in Southeast Pennsylvania, somewhere in the 5 counties or nearby the 5 counties.
Right.
So Trump ran a national campaign and a local campaign, and he talked about the issues that people care about, and they knew that in 17, 18, and 19, he actually delivered on those issues.
And J.D. Vance came to a factory in Philadelphia.
Right.
Remember that?
Yep.
That was a great day.
Fabulous.
It was
a factory
Right.
in really not a good part of Philadelphia.
Well, was a little dicey.
Yeah, dicey. Well, you're putting it
But
mildly.
it showed the support of.
But he
local
was
business.
there. There
Yeah.
was J.D. Vance.
Doing a local campaign stop
Absolutely.
with 200 people at it.
Absolutely.
And so, and I was there as well. It was a great event. Flip Philly Red was there. John was there. And
I was there.
I think Mina was there. And it was, you were there. It was a great event. And here it was, right in the heart of a place where where Republicans are told all the time, you can't go to Philadelphia. That's enemy territory. Listen, you don't have to win Philadelphia. But if you get Donald Trump level of support there, you're going to win. So what I'm saying is that the reason it was different this time with Donald Trump was because he had a history of delivering on the issues, right? He had an overarching message that was nationwide, and then he had specific messaging being delivered in local communities, not only by the surrogates who weren't sitting on CNN. They were here talking to the voters.
Right.
But they were also these Trump Force 47 groups that were, maybe hundreds and hundreds of people in a local county who were dedicated to that campaign. It was a brilliant strategy. Now you take him out, and the Republican Party as a whole, at the national level, at the state level, completely incapable of replicating what Donald Trump's campaign did by itself. Now we roll into 26, and they've picked Stacey Garrity to be the governor candidate.
Correct.
Now, Stacey's great. I mean, she's very charismatic. She has great delivery. She engages. She goes out and does the work. She's
Done a good job as treasurer.
Yeah, she's done a great job. So she should have, if you look at the funding that McCormick had in 24, $60 million, $61 million. If you look at the funding that Shapiro had in 22, $65 million, she should be sitting on $20 million now and already be running her messaging campaign, because the campaign started Wednesday.
Right. And I know that she is already starting her campaign, and she is fundraising now. I don't think she has $20 million in the bank yet, but she is working hard, and she is actually starting her campaign.
And she's an excellent candidate.
She's a great candidate, but if she doesn't have resources, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Now, I know everybody has all these feelings about Mastriano, some of which I think are justified, some are not, whatever, But the reality is he had $6.5 million available in the time that he could spend it. Some came in at the back end of his campaign. People, he should have spent it. It wouldn't have been possible.
Right.
He had a staff, a total staff smaller than Shapiro's media team, right?
Yeah.
He was outsourced 10-1 by Shapiro, and that included his primary run, where the party picks all had collectively, I think, somebody could check this, but I think it was like $17 million they had to spend just in the primary. He was out-resourced in the primary and wins. He got nothing for the general. And you just can't compete with these people. Now, when these wise old elders of the party, come to folks like us and say, well, I hate to tell you this, but it takes money to win races, as if we're idiots, as if people don't know that, right? Oh, gee, that's great.
That's a surprise.
The other one I love is, we got to get the young people involved. Oh, that's brilliant,
Yeah.
Look, everybody knows it takes money. And if 26 is going to be a year where Republicans compete in Pennsylvania, then they have to find a way to get $60 to $100 million into the Stacey Garrity campaign. Now, maybe we'll have a primary. People were thinking Mastriano might announce or somebody else might announce. Maybe there'll be a primary. But now the focus is on eliminating the primary, that the little group of 5 or 10 people that pick every candidate, pick the candidates, and then we're all supposed to sit around and applaud. Well, Stacey's a good candidate.
Yeah.
So now the people that picked her have got to come up with $60 to $100 million so that she can fight a battle in a state of 12 million that is a big piece of geography, so she can fight a battle efficiently, so that she can have the workers that she needs, the staff that she needs, the ad campaign that she needs. And if they're not going to do it, then let's not pretend this is serious.
And let's see how much is going to be spent on the back end to the consultants and the people who really, this is a business, right? For every election, there is a business. And I am hopeful. Stacey's been through a lot of campaigns. I am hopeful that she is using that, $60, $100 million wisely. She's been a great treasurer candidate, to Bunny's point.
You're saying if
Absolutely.
the only consultant you can hire is Cold Spark, and if you have to pay the most expensive printer for your flyers, maybe that's not the best use of capital?
Not the best use of funds. But I think Stacey knows that. I think she's going to do her best.
She is smart, and she understands the ground game.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a ground game, much like you said with Trump.
Yeah.
Surrogates, bus, going into the city, going into the towns, showing up. And she has done that as treasurer.
Yep.
She has been to all 67 counties multiple times.
Yes.
She is well known and she understands the ground game, and I think she will do a very good job. But funding, surprising, you do need money.
You know, we had Scott Perry on last week, I think, the week before.
Yeah,
Scott Perry's a fabulous
great.
representative in Congress. If he's at risk and he doesn't have the resources he needs, and Stacey doesn't have the resources, then 26 is not going to be a serious effort. Be prepared to lose. If you want to figure out how to win, here's what you do. You go look at what Donald Trump did. He didn't win with mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots collapsed in 2024. The reason he won is because fewer Republicans voted by mail and 700,000 fewer Democrats voted by mail. So he was able to win.
How many people know that, Gary?
Well, that'd be three right here. And, you know,
I mean, we'll
whoever's listening.
throw Mina and Ada in there.
Whoever's listening.
We'll throw them in there as people who know that. But, I mean, the party, the Republican Party, keeps pushing the mail-in ballots, and while they truly believe that he won in 24 because more people voted with mail-in ballots, because that was the mantra. You got to vote with mail-in ballots.
Yes.
And that's what Lawrence Tabus had pushed Donald Trump to say, that, you know, if you can't be there in person, well, then use the mail-in ballot. I think he said that maybe once. He kept saying absentee and all that, but I think he said mail-in ballot maybe once.
He's not saying that now.
He is certainly not
No.
saying that
No.
now. So, and I had gone to the PAGOP before these elections, and I said, you are sending mixed messages to these voters. You are saying to use the mail-in ballot, and those voters voted for Donald Trump, and he's saying not to use the mail-in ballot,
Right.
not to trust it. And
So
that's the other issue. Is
you're dead
the mixed
right.
messages.
That's exactly right. So if you want to win in 26, here's what you do. You look at what Donald Trump did. You actually look at the numbers so you don't get fooled by this mail-in ballot story. And then you do what he did. These races need resources. They need overarching messaging. They need a competent ad campaign. They need gripping emotional messages. And you cannot hide from the tough issues. Donald Trump addressed the tough issues head on, and he won.